Thank you, Chairman Setzler. We are going to thank the members of the committee for attendance today, for your hard work on the educating the children of Georgia. We have one item that's a hearing only for House Bill 263 by Representative Valencia Stovall. We'll be taking testimony today on just one item. If you'd like to speak to the item, please sign up to the at the desk. When sign up to testify, please indicate whether you're pro or for the bill. The first item on the agenda, we do have a quorum, I see. The first item on the agenda is House Bill 263 by Representative Valencia Stovall. Representative Stovall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I bring before you House Bill 263, which is an open enrollment bill. And the bill allows a student to attend and be enrolled in any school if the individual residing in the attendance zone of the desired school has authored the parent or the guardian to use their individual's address. The resident given permission is prohibited from charging a fee for utilizing that particular address. And neither party will be criminally liable nor pay any attorney's fees or other fees for the use of the individual's address. This particular bill I introduced last year as well, and we'll keep introducing it each year. And the reason for the bill is that right now in the state of Georgia, if a parent uses another person's address that they do not reside in and is out of their zone, they can be criminally liable, which means they can be charged with a felony for falsifying government documents. And there was a case in Ohio where a parent had utilized her grandfather's address, and the school found out, they sent her a notice, and then later on they actually prosecuted her and sent her to prison, and also sent her father to prison because he was living at the grandfather's, that participated with using the address at her grandfather's address. And it should be unheard of that a parent will be arrested and charged with a felony, also go to prison, all because they want a better education for their child. There's a problem with the lack of access to quality schools in the state. It's a statewide problem. And many students reside in school districts where the performance levels are not where the parents desire. Parents can't afford to move their families to the better performing districts or to where a specialty school is located, or where the athletic program would give their child a better chance at a college scholarship. Most districts have enrollment options, but are able to decide which type of students can attend, and most have a certain time frame for the students to apply. Currently in state law, a parent and a co-conspirator, like I said, can be arrested and charged. This bill allows the parents the opportunity to choose the best school setting for his or her child based on the needs of the child without restrictions of the school zone. The problem would not be solved unless legislation is created because the school system won't generously agree to this bill. Why should the state of Georgia send parents and their co-conspirators to jail because they want a better educational opportunity for their children? It decreases the amount of money spent by schools hiring an investigator to identify those parents considered to be stealing an education. Some districts have social workers being detectives. They have staff drafting violation letters. They have posters that's spent on mailing letters and staff handling phone calls. The local court systems are tied up hearing these cases, and money is spent on attorneys by school districts, which are the taxpayers' money, and by parents defending themselves. This bill will also help to address the low ranking of Georgia among states for education because more children will have access statewide. Right now as a state, we are ranked according to all the schools and not one individual school throughout the state. And when you're looking at the overall ranking of the state, It's better to be able to offer every child an equitable education, and if that parent is willing to make the sacrifices to be able to take his or her child to what they perceive to be the better school districts, then they should be allowed. Right now, when it comes down to how prisons are being built or decided on, it's according to the 3rd grade, and now they're looking at 6th grade. And another example is that when one person in one county commits a crime, I'll use Clayton County. If someone in, we'll say DeKalb County, commits a crime and they are charged, they commit the crime in Clayton County, Clayton County does not send a bill to DeKalb County to pay for that defendant that they're housing in their jail. And if that's the case where they're not sending a bill to say you have to pay for this person because they actually live in DeKalb County, Clayton County is telling DeKalb, you need to send us money for housing them. So why is it when it comes to education, which is very, very important, why would one district want to say, well, you need to send me money, or I need to collect money for housing or for educating that particular child? In closing, when a child turns 18, they're no longer considered to be important by our K-12 system because they now have aged out. They become a societal problem. And if we don't allow for equity in education, which I bought 3 different sizes of cups to identify as an example of the different equitability we have in the state of Georgia when it comes to education. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Vice Chairman Ms. Stovall. That was a question from Representative Carter.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair Stovall. So first, I want to say thank you for bringing this bill. I think we were together when we heard the story, and it was heart-wrenching. And, you know, part of what you didn't share is the father actually died in jail while dealing with this situation. So definitely tugged on my heart. But my question is, in this bill, are you asking for the individual that reside in that area to be related to the student, or can just,
No.
you want anyone?
Yeah, so like I'm in Clayton, you're in DeKalb, if I may use you as an example.
Okay.
Okay, and so say the school district that you're zoned for has a particular program I want my child to participate in. Well, I could say, Doreen, I would like for my child to use your attendance zone that you're allowed to do because you live in that district. And then you will agree to it, and then I'll be responsible for making sure my child is transported back and forth. So that's not covered in the bill as far as making a requirement that transportation is provided or anything like that. These are for those parents who really feel very strongly about making sure that their child gets what they need and they have the capability of doing it. It does not solve all the problems that we have in K through 12. We'll be here forever dealing with that, but this just touches on some of those things.
May I ask one?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you be open to consider an amendment? And I know this is just a hearing, but if this was a piece of legislation that we were considering, would you be open to amending that receiving resident at least be related to the student?
No, I won't be open to that, and the reason why
Okay.
is because I don't have a relative that lives in Cherokee County. I don't have a relative that lives in Beaufort City Schools. So if I limit it to relatability, that mutes the point of the bill. So that's the reason why.
Chairman Sessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just start by saying I admire the lady's zeal for taking care of kids. I think as zealous as I am, I think your zeal might even exceed mine, and God bless you for that. I appreciate that. I look at this, the only thing I think about is from the standpoint of, and again, I was honored, I think it was 2009, to have co-sponsored Representative Alicia Thomas Morgan's bill that gave intra-district choice to parents. And again, that was a big step. I think a lot of kids in my county are very, very, very well served by that. The only thing, this is a practical matter I think about here is, let's say that, let's say you've got a county that's small, or a city school district that's small, that has a, for example, take Decatur City. I know Decatur City has a school system that's admired, or Marietta City, for example. Let's say that everybody in take Cobb County as an example, 750,000 people in the county. The city of Marietta has a population of about 60. They have their own city school system. If everybody decided they wanted their kid to go to Marietta High School, you've got a population of over 600,000 people, 15 other high schools that could say, we all want to go to Marietta City Schools and put our kids there. Marietta has a property tax base. They're able to support their own kids. Does it concern you that you could have literally because if I were in the business of trying to get business, if I were in the practice of wanting people to be able to attend and be a Blue Devil like my kids at Marietta High School, that's not one of my high schools, but it's if I lived in the city of Marietta and they've got a very good school, I could say, hey, any number of people can I will facilitate them going to Marietta High School. I might say, listen, I can only handle about 300 kids a year, but up to 300 kids a year, I will sponsor to be a Marietta Blue Devil. Then you've got people from around Cobb County coming in to do that. There's a limited base. And I say, you know what, I'm not going to stop at that. I'm going to extend. This really went well last year. I'm going to go to Paulding County, Cherokee County, Fulton County, all the surrounding counties. I'm just trying to think about how you, when you've got, roughly in Georgia, we have this covenant between the state and the locals. In Cobb, it's somewhere about 50-50. About 50% or so of the funding comes from the locals. About 50% comes from the state. I think my school board would be fast to point out they get a little less than half from the state, but it's about 50-50. What is the approach if those kids from outside that attendance zone are able to, or outside the school district, were able to kind of use this in a pretty intense way? How does the property tax base of Marietta support kids inundating their great high school?
Okay, that's a great question, because that always comes up. Even last year when I introduced the bill, and it was always the issue of overcrowding is another one. I have several answers. It might not be the right answers, but there are several answers. The first one is it would be kind of the same way that if people decided to move and had the wherewithal to move to the city of Marietta, then the responsibility would be to that local school system to accommodate all of those students that's there. We wouldn't be saying, okay, where we're going to get the money from, you're going to end up finding, then that means the state allocation amount could possibly go up, or we can redo another bill to say if you end up having a certain amount of students that exceeds what your normal capacity is, and you're not able to use the E-Splice, may not be enough, then you might get additional allocation, because the school that the children are coming from, they're not there, so they're not counted in the FTE. So they're not educating those particular kids. The next answer is just like we do with the charter schools with the lottery. That's another option that they put a cap on and say, okay, if you have this many kids, then once it's in the lottery, they have to wait to go in line, just like we do with charter schools.
Sure.
The next is, I think that it brings about the point of competition among schools. Because if you're a school that you have an influx of a lot of kids leaving, you need to be wondering, why are all those kids leaving? And if they're going to the school that the parents consider to be better, then the school that they're going to, I think that at some point, we need to even look at how do we form partnerships with the schools that are perceived. And the reason I keep using perceived, because it might not necessarily be the better performing schools, but it's what the parents perceive for it to be. And so if those schools that are better performing, why not do an exchange program with the schools that are lower performing? And especially you start seeing a huge influx leaving back and forth. Because I believe like this, if you're a school that's been high performing, which we have several that receives a GOSA award every year for always doing very well, And if you're doing that, then that tells me as a parent and as a community person that you know you got something going on that's really good. So why not share those experiences with the schools that are lower performing, almost like what we're doing with the chief turnaround officer, what we're doing with the school improvement programs, and allow an exchange to take place, because at the end of the day, we're ranked as a state. It does not matter whether you're in Marietta, whether you're in Camden County or any other county, we're ranked as a state. And to me, if we're gonna look at how do we increase our state ranking, and if that's very important for us among all the other states, then what do we do as a state to increase that ranking? And so there are several options that, you know, that are out there on the table.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, again, I know the lady shares my sentiment. My number one priority is increasing the ranking for one child, right? And if we take care of one, we take care of one, we take care of individuals, that you know, the system's going to work as a whole. I just, I mean, I love the reformative value, Mr. Chairman, of people leaving a school. I was understand that about 10 years ago, when the city of Indianapolis authorized the mayor to create charter schools, there was such an influx of kids to charter schools. I'm told that traditional zoned high school principals were going door to door, knocking on doors over the summer, asking for parents to send their kids to their high school. I love that, because now parents are viewed as customers, and that's the dynamic. I think it's a great dynamic. I just, my only concern would be from an intra-district perspective. There's only so much housing that someone can live in a district. I think from a district-to-district perspective, I think it's harder. I think within a district, the district knows, the school board knows all the tremendous power and flexibility school boards have under a constitution. They also have the duty to educate kids as well. And I think if it's within a district, it's easier. I think if you're having people cross district lines and the ad valorem taxation, the property taxes can't follow the kids, I think it becomes a little more difficult to do as a practical matter. I mean, I'm open to suggestions, because I love your heart on this. But, Mr. Chairman, it does seem like a higher threshold when you're crossing district lines to do this.
Thank you, Chairman Setzler. And I believe it's true that a child theoretically can go into any school inside their own district. The law states that right now, that the space is available. But and I do appreciate your heart as well on this, Representative Vice Chairman Stovall. Representative Nguyen, would you like to comment on this? You have a question? Oh, I'm not on this subcommittee. You can still ask a question. Oh, Representative Lopez, I'm sorry.
Yes, just as a comment, that I think maybe offline we can discuss a little bit more. But I actually see this what would be a better terminology of school choice, where
yes,
you're actually choosing what school you get to attend.
It is.
So as a general policy, I think it's an idea that we should continue working on.
Okay, thank you.
And I completely agree. This is a really neat idea. I think we need to look at this, maybe study it quite a bit. So, is there anybody on the nobody signed up for this? Okay, very good. All right. Any other questions? Any representative like to speak on the bill? Representative Carter.
Thank you. I think if I hear your heart, and I understand having the choice and the flexibility, but I think at the heart of this, is it criminalizing education? Is that what's at the heart of this?
It is, because I know several people that were in my county, and even before I moved to the county, we had general conversations, and they had no idea that they can actually be prosecuted. I don't think there's been a case in the state yet that I know. It might have been one. They actually went through the extent of it. But I think that as the quality of certain schools continue to rise, and you have more parents sneaking or stealing education, that I would call it, you're going to see an increase. And it could get to the point, because the school districts do have the authority to do that they would get to the point where I want to prosecute you to prove a point, so nobody else would want to come. And I just think that no parent or student has committed murder. No parent or student has committed grand larceny, or anything that you would consider to be a felony offense. Only thing they're saying is that I want a better opportunity for my child's education. I can't afford, unless we're going to give out housing vouchers, that's another bill I can introduce, that my child, you know, I can't afford to move to a certain district, but I believe that that school district is offering something that my local district, you know, is not offering. And so at the end of the day, to me, it's all about the children. And it's all about what's going to happen when they turn 18. We're all going to pay for it. We're either going to pay for it now or we're going to pay for it later. And when we just passed our budget of $2 billion for the Department of Corrections, even though it went down some, but it's still $1.2 billion. And those majority of people that are in there, a lot of them are uneducated or undereducated. And so at what point do we stand strong and say the education of our kids are what's most important for us here in Georgia, not what adults think or how it's going to affect adults?
Chairman Setzler?
Mr. Chairman, one thing to the lady, you know, perhaps you can, as you think through this, you know, decriminalize this, make it a civil penalty of $175 if you're caught doing this, you know, $150.
It's still a lot of money, but I get you.
Okay,
That's
very
an
good.
option. I appreciate the offer.
That's a very good option. Would anyone else like to speak to this bill? Okay, this is a hearing only today. Vice Chairman Stovall, I really appreciate your heart, and this meeting is now adjourned. We'll very quickly be moving into the full Education Committee. Meeting is
Thank you,
adjourned.
Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you. Okay, let's get started. And I thank you, committee members, for being here. I know there's at least 5 other full committees underway right now. Appreciate it. If you got to go, just kind of look around before you leave. Make sure we maintain quorum. And I believe that is 7, is it not? It is. So just kind of make sure, don't be like me, get caught leaving health the other day, and Chairman Cooper saying, Rick, you can't leave. And so that happened to me. Be careful walking around the halls. The Girl Scouts are selling cookies. You know, oh yeah, Chairman Coat, yeah. So, you know, just be careful or be happy. I don't know which one you want to be. But I'm going to start our meeting off with a little prayer. We got a big one today, so let's just say it. We'll bow our heads together, please. Heavenly Father, thank you for letting us be together, and thank you for looking over us. And, you know, please, you know, give us wisdom, make us wise, do the right thing today, and bless this meeting in your name. Amen. Okay, so someone asked me, Rick, Chairman Jaspers, why did you have a subcommittee before a full committee on a busy day like today? Well, just so you'll know, if you've not been in one of these before, you need that time. There was a possibility of a bill that we need, the REACH scholarship bill from Chairman Dickey. We just didn't get it. We just barely, it wouldn't work out. So I'd put this meeting, subcommittee there, so I could have moved it out into full committee today. It just didn't work out. It's just a little technical thing, but I don't mind explaining, you know, what we're up to in doing that. Also, if you look on your agenda, you'll see House Bill 32 by Chairman Tanner. That bill is going to be tomorrow. We needed a little extra time to work on that, and Chairman Tanner has a huge conflict right now. Should I tell him what he's doing? He's selling chickens in just a few minutes, and he runs a poultry farm, and he's got to be there. And so this kind of work, so we're going to do that tomorrow after he doesn't sleep all night, and he sells 100,000 chickens tonight. So we tried to work with him, committee, and that just let you know that Miss Emily is working on a time right now, sometime tomorrow afternoon, to find time to hear that very important bill. And we'll certainly let you know just as quick as we figure it out. I have my vice chairman, if he will assign a few bills. They're right there. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cool. We've got 3 bills that need to be assigned. The first one is H.R. 367, and that resolution will be assigned to academic support. Senate Bill 48 will be assigned to academic achievement, and Senate Bill 68 will be assigned to academic support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Chokas. Okay, the order of the bills that we're going to work on right now. First, we're going to do House Bill 444. Floor Leader Reeves has needed and I've gotten 2 texts from your chairman that you're needed in judiciary. And I said, we're going to work on this right now. Thank you. It is, and we'll start that one. The second will be House Bill 527, Chairman Dickey, House Bill 86, Benton, House Bill 83, Douglas, and then last but not least, House Bill 464, Mr. Monthan, right there. You know, one thing, the first one we're going to hear is House Bill 444, and with Floor Leader Reeves. And while I have the mic just a minute, for those in the audience, as you talk to your constituencies, I think it's very important to note that this is a bill that I would say a work in progress. You know, we've been back and forth. We have all, and I'm going to take a moment. Where's Betsy at? Committee members, do y'all know this lady? Yes. I hope you do. Members out there in the audience, do y'all know this lady? Yes. You probably don't, but you should. Let's give her a hand. I cannot tell you at this moment the pressure Legislative Council's under, and we thank you. I know you were working yesterday and Saturday and Friday, and I hope that the committee knows that. So to you out there in the audience, as you talk to your school principals and career academy people and all these different things, we've created a set of guardrails. And I think Floor Leader would say they're in concrete. So if you're outside of our guardrails, you're outside of them. But if you're within them, you got constructive comments, we'd love to hear from you. And I think, but we'll start, and I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chairman Chokus as we're going to present, what we did in House Bill 444 and the changes we made.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Started, oh, okay. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we get started, those are the last 10 minutes. Do I have any bids? Representative Reeves, you're up. House Bill 444.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will yield.
Oh, pardon me, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to yield to the great chairman of this committee, Chairman Jaspers, who has worked up a sub. We've been, as he mentioned, we've been working together on this very tough issue, and we're going to keep working together on this until we get to the right place.
Thank you. Okay, members, you're working off of LC 337891S. Just make sure, we had one, if you kept it, from the other day. This one's a little different. Not a lot. We made some changes based on testimony and questions, and for the full committee, I'm we'll go through the bill pretty completely like I did in subcommittee, but so I think you need to make sure we all understand what it does, and because this is an important issue that in every school system in the state of Georgia. We look at the first section in line 18, we're talking about purpose. And I think that's when we had our first joint appropriations meeting, we talked about purpose. Let's make sure that everybody out there knows what our purpose is. And we did that. If you look on line 18, you can read it. And I think it does a good job with that. On 25, 30 hours. The covered dual course credit means 30 hours, not including summer term. And we've stuck with that. There were some questions on that the other day. And while I'm talking about it, remember, in the bill, after summer term, the student can pay for it themselves or working through their counselor. And I want to hit that again and again through here. They could use their lottery money. Well, that's the way I call it. So make sure you know that we're giving some options there. On 36, on 35, this really matches the budget language that you see in the bill that you passed the other day. Within the limits, 10th, 11th grade, 12th grade at TCSG, 11th and 12th at USG and other post-secondary institutions. There was some question the other day about making sure everybody was listed here. You'll see us offer an amendment at the end with appropriate time that on line 38, after the word dual credit courses, we're going to strike University System of Georgia or, private post-secondary, and we're going to say dual credit courses at an eligible post-secondary institution. I think that'll clear all that, who's what, who's in, who's out, that's been in there. And we certainly hope so. You look on, so I lose my place here. Okay, flip over, line 68. This is just a nice change that we recognize that in dual enrollment, we're putting more emphasis on what the college is doing. And so not only will we require in this bill that the teachers be with that college or TCSG, but also they take ownership in the counseling of the student. And if you look in line 68 through 76, it really spells that out, that they're going to be at the beginning, at the 15-hour mark, and the 30-hour mark, talking to a counselor from the approved, the post-secondary institution to make sure they're getting good counseling. Now, we do say there at the end they can talk to them on phone. That's fine. Or text or whatever, however they do it. But we want that contact so that it's very clear what these kids are doing because, after the 30 hours, they're into their lottery money. So keep that back in the back of your mind. Let's see here. 30. Okay, look over on line 127. Okay, and that's where we're talking about the delivery. Like I said a moment ago, we're going to make sure that they're part of the deliverer. That way, I think that is something that's going to go back and address rigor, which I think has been a concern out there. And these people are also SACS accredited, or whoever they are accredited with will take the responsibility for the accreditation of the individual teacher. Now, we're not saying that a high school teacher can't do it, but if they do, they've got to be an employee of the post-secondary institution. And let's see, we move on down to 7. Okay, in 132, so after 30 hours, what's paid for? It really talks about that. 190 quarter hours or 127 semester hours. Flip over. It kind of goes through the details of that. On number 145, we changed to 16 hours, was 15. We became aware that some people are taking courses that may have a lab that has that extra hour in there. We want to make sure we don't stop them for sure. In H, we talk about the commission. We know they do a great job. We're really proud of them. We didn't introduce, I'm sorry. Let's stop. This lady, student finance, and she's got her sidekick. Where's he at? Right there. If you don't know him, you need to. And they do a great job administering, writing. How many checks do y'all write a year?
Hopefully very few, and it's ACH.
No, I'm teasing. But and we're making sure that they're responsible for the administration, the code section, but creating data. And I think we talked to Chairman Knight, and as a chairman of that appropriation committee, he really wants data, and I think that really helps us get it, because I think they'll just do a great job doing that. We flip over. I think I'm over on my next big difference is on 199. I think it's nice to note, that under no circumstances on 199 shall eligible post-secondary institutions require, paying tuition. We're just clearing that up. If you're taking a non-covered dual enrollment class, that means you're outside of your 30 hours, you're on yours, or you're paying for it yourself, you're still going to be covered. And I think that's a very nice note in there. If you look over on line 218, we're talking about setting the rates. And we set the rates as a base that's a month ago. And I think that's real important to note that, these are businesses, they need some certainty that's going on right now, and we're trying to do that with that. And we'll do that with that. In section 2, a lot of it's a lot of writing to say that you had 190 hours plus the 30 dual enrollment. That's on us. And that means student finance and all the dual enrollment. But 190 plus a dual and more, that's on you, which I think is very fair. And I think it's one of the most generous programs that's out there. Section 2 really talks about clarity. Now, Section 3 was the one we had so much fun with during the subcommittee. And I thank Ms. Courtney right here and her crew for working on that and kind of clearing that up. Because Section 3, we just, someone said, Rick, you did a really good job, but in Section 3, you just did not. And I said, well, thanks for giving us a second chance in full committee. Okay, if you look at Section 3, it says upon signing, or on July or June, whatever it is, 31st, when all bills go into effect, they're passed, if they're not vetoed. Line 246 says, those who have taken a dual credit upon the effective date, courses taking starting on summer 2019 will count towards their 30-hour max. So, at that point, but courses taken prior to that date, we don't count them. So everybody that's involved in this is going to have 30 hours. We're not harming anybody by this, and I think that's great. If you're not in the program in line 253, you're not started it, you'll see that it starts for them in fall of 2019, and then they're under the 30 hours like everybody else is. I think that really clears it up. I might have worded it a little bit differently, but I hope that clears it up. We're holding people harmless. And this course is starting this July or this summer will be counted. Okay? And so, Mr. Chairman, that's our bill. I know that's a pretty quick going, but like I said, and like the floor leader said, this is a work in progress. You know, we're trying to make sure that we work within the budget that we passed last week, and that's what this bill does. And just the technical aspects, you know, yeah, there's probably even still one or two things we've got to work on, and we will be working on those between now and when we get through the Senate, work with Chairman Martin over there. And we'll try to do our best to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've got a few questions. The first one is, who's number 16? My vice chair on the subcommittee, Ms. Valencia, number 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Chairman, for bringing this bill and updating opportunities for students with dual enrollment. I do have a couple of questions, actually, just two. The first question is, how much does the school district still receive for dual enrollment students that are not going to be on their campus, but are actually going to TSG and also to the other, I think y'all changed the wording on it, to eligible post-secondary?
There are no changes, ma'am. They're made whole.
Okay.
As it currently is.
Okay. Do you know what that amount is that the schools receive?
I think it's very much independent on each individual student based on the FTE they earn.
Mm-hmm.
So it would, but it's that we're not changing that.
Okay. May I ask the second
Sure.
question?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So the next question was, with the apprenticeship program, who are requiring those additional hours and summer hours, and being that the corporations have invested so much in equipment and money to making sure that they are not end up not being able to be able to participate in the program, how are we handling that part?
Doggone it. You caught me.
I wasn't trying to.
You did. That is the one part that we're working on that I think we don't have a complete answers on yet on, you know, on who's funding what and making sure we don't do the wrong thing. I think you'll see us being cautious on that. There's not a lot of kids, but that program's going to grow. We know it is. So we wanted to be real cautious on what we did on the apprenticeship, and so that's a work in progress, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But you caught me. Good
I was
catch.
trying to.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, number 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman, I have to warn you, I told the Girl Scouts that there was an education meeting in 406, and they should probably come in here and make some sales.
Did you not see I bought? I got 2 boxes, and Chairman Chokus did. They got us in the hallway.
Thank you. I have 2 questions for you. One was just the process on how you arrived at that 30-hour cap, and then the second was on line 35, where 9th graders there's the strike through on 9th graders being eligible to take the dual courses, and why that was made.
I think Florida and I both will chime in on that. Do you
Sure.
like to start?
Well,
Hang on just a second.
you go and then,
Okay, we'll go.
Let me,
Okay.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Representative. The 30 hours, and if Ms. Noggle, if you want to, you know more about the background, but this was a work of a budgeting process of figuring out what we can afford and keeping it in the sustainable box, if you will. And that was the number that that worked out from that discussion that happened, some time ago. And, again, and I've had this conversation with folks all over the whole state, as it turns out, for the last week. I've had a lot of, I've been responding to a lot of emails, and there is a misunderstanding that that you are only eligible for 30 hours, but you can always, as we've discussed, dip into your lottery hope funds and complete that however many it is that you take. And as far as the ninth, there was, as far as the technical schools and why the ninth was stricken from that, I will let, do one of y'all want to, could probably better answer as far as why ninth graders were removed from the technical?
As a policy from that we received, that's what how it is. But I think the most important thing to remember, and we talked about in subcommittee, is this program has grown fabulously in 4 years. This is the 4th year, and I just asked the director, commissioner, I can't get her name. What's your title again?
Interim president.
Interim president. Just talk about the growth of it. I think it'll help you kind of understand.
Sure. The program has grown well over 100% in the last 4 years, probably closer to a couple 100%, but double-digit growth every year, upwards of 20 to 25% across all of our sectors, and projected to grow at that rate continuing into next year. I think eliminating the ninth graders really came from, like the chairman said, a couple different perspectives of both trying to provide exposure, access, and opportunity for our students while still putting some cost parameters around it. And ninth graders just seem to fall outside of that under what we were trying to achieve in the bill.
And I think you got to go back, Representative Wynn, and look at line 18, 19, 20, and 21, where we talked about why. What's the bill going to do? I mean, and I think when you think about qualified high school students, and I'm not saying that they're not ninth graders who are ready for college, because I know a few that are too, and to increase graduation rates, skilled workforce, all that good stuff, that it fit to really limit some to 11th and 12th, and TCSG 10th, 11th, and 12th, because that fits what we want to do generally. But yeah, you're right. We're paring this back.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask one more question.
Sure.
Can you just share with us, by eliminating the ninth graders that would have been eligible to be part of the program, do you have the number of how many students were previously enrolled as ninth graders, what that looks like?
It's pretty small. I can certainly follow up with you afterwards and provide you the number. We know that in total 9th and 10th graders was about 8,000, and 9th graders make up a very small subset of that, so probably less than a couple of thousand students.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Cool. Number 20, Chairman Benton.
Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I really do appreciate all the work y'all have done on this. My school does this 9th and 10th grade for USG, so it is going to affect folks. I want y'all to know that, and but I do appreciate all the work you've done. I know this is a cost saving. To me, this is one of the best things we do, and I know it makes the AP folks a little bit concerned because it's cut into their business quite a bit. But I do think this is one of the best things we do. Can you assure me that the quarter system folks for the GMC has been taken care of in line 135 to 137? Is that the only place where this quarter system is referenced?
There are some other places in the bill. There are some other places in the bill where that accounts for the quarter equivalent or quarter conversion, whatever it is we want to call it. I believe. My understanding is that we've hit all of those areas and included that quarter language as well.
Thank you.
Good. Well, that concludes all. Oh, wait a minute. Well, we got 3 more. All right, number 16.
I have another question. For the students, and I think I might ask this during subcommittee meeting, but for the students who are participating in alternative graduation, how does this affect the number of hours that they are limited to as far as with participating in the program, or does it have any effect at all?
Those students would still be allowed to pursue those graduation plans. They would be eligible for 30 hours of state-funded dual enrollment and then could continue to complete their program in high school using their lottery hours from the 127-hour limit.
So, but before, they didn't have to use their lottery money, is that correct?
Correct. There were some time length limitations, but that cap provision is new in this bill.
So if I may add another question. So that's, to me, that seems like that would deter some of the students that had been participating in the alternative graduation, where they were leaving high school after they finished the 8 EOCs and were going full-time on the college campus. It's being a regular college, I mean, they were regular college students anyway with the dual enrollment. But with that, and I know several students, it's not a whole lot of them over the years, but I do know some of the students that have participated in that. And if now you're saying they're gonna not be able to, that money now has to, part of it now has to come against their lottery or hope money, it's kind of like, seem like we're punishing them for being able to be academically available or able to now do the alternative graduation. Like I said, I know it's not a lot, because I know it wasn't a lot in APS. It wasn't a lot in Clayton County. I don't know about any of the other places. But you're talking about a small fragment, but I just think that kind of will make them say, well, I just might as well stay and not pursue that. And the reason I brought that up, my niece actually participated in the alternative graduation last year, and she was at Maynard Jackson High School. So she did 8 EOCs, and then she went on to Atlanta Metropolitan State College. Took her 2 years, and now she's a junior at Bernal University. And so, so she's gonna finish her course ahead of time, but just thinking her mother didn't have the money to be paying, or, you know, because if she wasn't able to do the alternative graduation, then she would be on a regular track. And just like I said, just seemed like it's a punishment to those students. That's on the comment that I had to make.
Thank you.
We are putting guardrails on the program. Yes, ma'am. I think that's just the brutal, honest answer.
Super. All right. Number 18.
Thank you, Chairman, floor leader.
Madam President, interim president.
Yeah, I was about to say the interim Madam President. And my question is kind of in the line with Representative Vice Chair was just saying. But so I just want to, I'm always trying to make sure I'm clear and understanding. So I understand the 30 hours, but if the students are taking courses during the summer, they have to pay out of pocket.
I think, or remember we talked about the counseling. You know, if the counselors are agreeing and advise them to do that, they can tap into their Hope lottery money.
That was the next
I think
part
the
of
counselors are the key thing here, that we don't want students wasting classes. That's my word, but that are going toward the goal of the program we stated in the very beginning, that they're on track to graduation. And I think too, and I'll throw out, because as chairman of higher ed last year, student debt is incredibly important. And I want to make sure, I guess when I started learning about this bill and learning about dual enrollment in general, I saw it as a reduction in student debt. And I want to make sure that we continue that, because that to me is just a burden on many graduating kids. But
Okay.
Pardon me for preaching, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm not going to enter into the student debt part because we might have flashbacks. So the option, if I heard you correctly, if either pay it out of pocket or tap into the lottery funds, i.e. Hope. So if a student is taking a course in the summer or exceed that 30 hours and they tap into the Hope funds, how does that affect their available funds once they graduate high school and off to college?
I mean, I could be corrected if I'm wrong here, but ideally, the courses that they're taking with the 30 hours state funded, and then if they dip into their lottery funds, that those credits are going to, hopefully, if not all, most of them are going to transfer to whether USG or whatever avenue they go, and therefore they would be eligible for graduation before the 127, before they would have to take 127 credit hours after high school. So does that answer your question? I get the feeling that it doesn't. So
It's the accountant in me. No, it didn't.
well, if you, yes, let me try it this way. If you use your 30 state-funded hours and then you dip in and use, let's say, 15 of your Hope Lottery hours, then when you move on from high school and you are full-time enrolled at a USG campus, then you would only have 112. You would have 112 Hope-covered, lottery-covered hours to use at that point. But also somewhere along in that process, you have credits for a good bit of college courses too, from what you had done while you were in high school.
And that's and if you don't mind, so that's one of the fundamental changes in this legislation. Is previously the students, if they used the lottery funds or whatever, that pot of money that paid for dual enrollment, did not affect their funding for Hope. Their college courses. My
understanding is that before this, and I guess as it is right now, that there's an unlimited number of state hours, and then there are 127. The clock didn't start ticking on the 127 hours until they were had graduated high school and were full-time enrolled at USG.
Gotcha.
So there was almost an unlimited source from the state, and then a 127 limit. And where that has led us to, the success of this program has been wonderful, but it's led us to a pathway of instability and something that we cannot sustain. And so that's why, this is, I'm learning every legislation that you work on is a learning experience, and I'm learning how fun it is to trim something and cut something on this. It's not an easy task,
right.
But we have to put some limitations on this to make it work going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, number 12.
No, 11.
11. Number 11.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually had basically the same concerns that Representative Wynn had, and maybe for another day, if we could have, what is the difference or cost, I guess, reduction savings that we would get between the 30 credit hours and maybe a different amount, which in my head would be 60, simply because I'm thinking about that would actually be an associate's degree for those students that are 60 credit hours roughly would be equivalent to about an associate's degree or close to completing an associate's degree. Actually, something that Chairman Jasper said regarding this being very helpful in reducing school debt, I think being able to complete at least a basic associate's degree still serves the main purpose of why we had dual enrollment.
And thank you, Representative. And again, anybody here, please feel free to correct me if I'm not spot on, but you still can. You just would dip into your Hope Lottery funds, and you would still be able to do that. You would just have to dip into your 127 allotted hours for that, and so that I don't think that there's anyone. This program is not. The changes to this are not in any way trying to keep that from happening. It's just where the money is coming from. And so if all that someone is seeking is an associate's degree, then they would be able to achieve that fully paid for by the combination of the state and the lottery. And then if they did intend to then go on to USG, then there may, if all of the credits aren't transferable, it's possible that at some point towards the latter part of their USG time that they may not have coverage. But we can't account for every scenario, and as Chairman Jasper said earlier, this is a very generous. It's a generous program. It is generous as is, and it's also generous with the proposed changes on it too. Did y'all have anything to add in that?
Our interim president and I were just talking. I think it's good to understand that there are two pots of money that we're working with here. And if we look at the appropriations bill that Chairman Dickey has, dual enrollment's in there. Comes right out of the revenue that comes in, whereas lottery is a different pot. And so it's those combinations of two that have made this work. But also, as I say again, the best program in the United States by far. And I was always like to throw that out. That's what's going on. Some people don't remember that.
Right, and no, and I understand. That's why I was asking if we could actually see what are the numbers, right? Just like the number of students affected, that would be ninth graders. What would the numbers in costs be between 30 versus 60 credit hours?
Twice the amount.
Not all will be taking all 60 credit hours. So I know those are estimated projections because there's a lot of ifs and assumptions that have to go into it, but I think that most auditing companies might be able to do that through your office.
Thank you. We've got one more. Number 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I have one more question for you, and it goes back to the ninth graders and taking them out of the equation. And I'd like a better understanding, I think, just the cost savings with that. And I know you may not have those raw numbers right now, but one of the things that I'm thinking of, because I work in a public high school with young people, is that students are at the most risk of dropping out of school in 9th and 10th grade. And dual enrollment is one mechanism in which we can help kids stay in school. So my concern is when we take away options for ninth graders, how is that going to play out in terms of whether or not those specific students would actually stay in school? Because we know once kids hit 11th or 12th grade, they're more likely to graduate from high school. So we just have some concerns about that.
Cool. All right, well, the lights have just lit up. Thought we were about to be finished. Okay, we'll go with number 25.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry I was late getting here, but how would this affect the public school system, and would they lose any, as far as their students' ability to participate? Because my school superintendent's telling me she's going to lose about 90 students.
We were talking, so we didn't hear your question. I'm sorry.
I think if I heard your question correctly, Representative, it does not change QBE funding or the FTE dollars that go to a local school system. That remains unchanged by this bill. This only impacts student eligibility, length of eligibility.
Yeah, I agree. I don't understand the loss of dollars to us. I can't. You probably have to have that person call us. It would be a good idea and let us talk to us.
Thank you. All right. Number 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to know if the advanced placement classes that the ninth graders are taking, does that apply to the dual enrollment too once they complete high school?
I believe I can answer that. AP
Yes.
is what you're.
Yes.
No, they're unrelated to this.
Okay.
Yeah, because remember in AP, Representative, you have to then take a test to and
I
get
was
a
just
certain
talking about
number
the
of 3,
ninth
4, or
graders
5.
just to help them out.
I'm sorry. I'm
Just for the ninth graders once they take these classes.
Well, I think a ninth grader, if they're taking AP English, if they can do well enough to get a 3, 4, or 5, depending on the institution they go to, they'll get college credit for it.
Okay, that's what
But that's totally different than this.
Okay.
Cool. It looks like that's all the questions at this time. The chair would entertain a motion. What's the will of the committee? There's a motion to pass. Is there a second? There's a second. Super. Well, let's go ahead and vote.
Well,
Any further discussion? Thank you.
yeah, we have an amendment.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. All right. Would you be kind enough to read the amendment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. If you look on line 38, it says high school taking dual credit courses. After the word courses, we'll strike within the University System of Georgia or at a private post-secondary institution. And after that, the word dual credit courses will add at an eligible post-secondary institution. We feel that statement catches everybody.
Okay. Let me repeat that. Striking from on line 38, within the university system of Georgia or at a private post-secondary institution, and replacing it with at an eligible post-secondary institution. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Now, what is the procedure? Do I need a second for that? Is there a second for changing the language? Second? Thank you. Good, thank you. Any further discussion? Good, are we gonna order pizza? Anyway, with that being said, all those in favor of receiving the due pass for LC, oh, we got to vote on the amendment first. On the amendment, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Cool. The amendment passes. Now for the main measure. All those in favor of receiving the due pass by substitute with, and that's on LC 3378991S, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Gotcha. 2 noes, okay. Thank you. Apparently, you received the due pass. Congratulations.
Oh, excuse me. But floor leader has.
Thank y'all, and just know that we are going to continue to work through this. We are where we are in the timing of things. But I promise each and every one of you, I give you my word that we're going to keep working through this bill, and assuming that it receives favorable passage on the through the body, then we will continue to work on it on the other side. This is this is a fluid issue. We want to make sure that we get it right, and so we're going to keep working on that. So please understand that, and I am available for anybody's input on any of this at any point. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Dickey, our member that's not a member, who we appreciate very much in his work on the Education Appropriations Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your hard work on that last bill.
Well, thank you. Your hard work too.
Members of the committee, I bring you HB 527. This is the bill that updates the QBE program weights that are listed in code. Georgia code states that those variances should be no more than 1.5%, and several of these categories are out of variance, and so we're just trying to true them up. And the reason they're getting out of balance is the increased funding. We've been added the last few years to education. Of course, the large pay raise we're recommending this year, the fully funding QBE last year, adding money to the TRS program for teacher retirement. So it's time to true up these ratios and weights, and so that's all this bill does. We have to do it every few years, and so I ask your approval of this bill.
Any committee members have a question for Chairman Dickey? I mean, this is one we can celebrate because this is putting in code what we've done in the appropriations process, and I thank you for that. I'd welcome to take a motion. Got a motion for due pass, a second? Hear that. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? Chairman Dickey, Go stand on the on the wall.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
members of
sir.
the committee.
What did I say was number 2? Where's my? Yeah. I've got too many papers here today. Where's it at? Yeah, here it is. Excuse me, I have just too many papers. Okay, number 2 is House Bill 86, Chairman Benton. Okay, in your folder, you'll see 86. It's a sub. And we sent out earlier today, something we try to do to give you all plenty of time to look at a bill. Ma'am, Chairman Benton has to present this bill all by his little lonesome.
You didn't present yours all by your little lonesome.
Well, yeah, well, I was helping the floor leader.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I do have double standard, I guess.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 86, we're going to be working from substitute LC 33 8776S. And this is a bill that provides for an appeal for evaluations at the end of the year. And it gives the employee a right to appeal a performance appraisal to a higher level of supervision, which enhances the employee's perception of the job evaluation process as fair and promotes good employee relations, as long as the higher level review is not a pro forma review. Failure to exercise the right of appeal may be damaging to the case of any employee who later attacks the evaluation in an EEO or wrongful discharge claim. It also, the right of appeal provides another means by which the employer can assess whether or not supervisors are doing a good job of performing the evaluation. This is a simple appeals process for identified educators. Teaching is one of the only professions which cannot appeal in an evaluation, yet after 2 years of poor evaluations, a teaching license can be suspended. This bill gives rights only to tenured teachers with unsatisfactory evaluations. Teaching has one of the highest turnover rates as more and more educators realize they have limited to no rights and input in classroom discipline, evaluation appeals, and other critical factors which would elevate the educational profession. The local system is able to construct the appeals process with emphasis on a non-burdensome process for all parties, a reasonable timeline, and a mechanism to have a fair intervention from a third neutral party if that is decided. There is no fiscal component to the bill, and it is a proven fact that when educators feel they have input in their profession, they're more likely to stay. This is supported by all the teachers' organizations and by State School Superintendent Richard Woods. In going through the bill, the substitute has a couple of changes that we came about because of questions that were asked in the subcommittee. And on line 22 and 23, also down to 24, the change was made. It says, for teachers who have accepted a school year contract for the fourth or subsequent consecutive school year, performance ratings of unsatisfactory, ineffective, or need development contained in personal evaluations, they produce that produce a procedural deficiency on the part of the local school system or charter school. And what we had in there, and I don't know whether I've got a copy of the original bill or not. It said unsatisfactory performance rating contained in personnel evaluations. So we changed the wording so that everybody would understand that unsatisfactory, ineffective, or needs development would cause the case for an appeal. I want to remind the members of the committee that these are year-end evaluations, that evaluations during the year are just simply number evaluations, and you could be found deficient in one or more areas by number, and then later in the year bring those up to where you're not deficient or unsatisfactory. And so this is simply the end of the year appeal. And I think that we have in here that they can be formal or informal appeals as necessary. And the system is given the option of a timeline. We did not put anything in there that would limit the systems, like saying you have 2 weeks to do this. They are just simply required, if the teacher asks for an independent evaluation, required to do this. We also have it in there that these things are submitted to the Department of Education, and that if there's any type of reprisal, the teacher may refer the matter to the PSC, Professional Standards Commission. I'll be glad to take any questions that the committee might offer.
Thank you, Chairman Benton. 27, is that Chairman Nix? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Benton and I had talked about this, and I just wanted to make sure he went over it, but we may need a legal opinion on it, or somebody in the community there. Are we absolutely sure that the only thing that can be appealed is the end of year evaluation? Because if we start appealing every part of that, then, you know, if you get an unsatisfactory in one area, but you're satisfactory overall, we'd probably never get through appealing. Does any other wording need to be put in there to indicate that is the final end of year appeal?
Wait a minute, are you, what number are you, Ms. 13? Thank you. There you go.
Yeah, I'm looking at the code section now that provides for those conferences, and I think the one you're talking about is the summative evaluation conference. We can specify that. I believe, though, that those ratings, well, I was going to say I think those ratings only apply at the end, but that may not be correct. So we could specify that, though.
I think, do you understand why I'm asking that question? I think we need to make sure that we can appeal, you know, different parts of it, because everybody wants to be superior or whatever the top rating is, and we can't get into that where you can appeal every section is all I'm concerned about.
Mr. Chairman, those ratings are only at the end of the year.
Legislative, are you good with that?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I was just trying to read the code section. That's what I had. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. Chairman Nix, are you good with that?
Good.
Okay. Chairman Cantrell next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Benton, thank you for bringing this bill. I certainly think teachers need to have the opportunity to appeal their evaluation. My question is this. Are teachers currently prohibited from appealing their evaluation?
Yes.
They are. Wow. Enough said.
Okay, next. Well, they're just like a little Christmas tree here. I'm going to go to 22.
You don't have to take questions if you don't want to, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, no. You know, Mr. Chairman, I sat there and glad for you too. 22, is that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Chairman Benton. I've got a question, and this is not part of the changes that you did in your bill, but it's on line 2, and I'd like either you or Miss Betsy to explain. It says on line 2, this policy for complaint policy for teachers and other school personnel. And is other school personnel administrators, parapros? Could I get some direction on what that means?
If I can just interject, lines 1 through 9 is just a summary, and I don't think I say that relation to other personnel.
That's just the code section.
That's just a summary.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, let's just pick the next. Who's 18 down there?
They were all
Doreen.
18 at one
Okay,
time.
go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Bennett. Question for me on line 22, where it states if a teacher has accepted a school year contract for the fourth or subsequent consecutive school year, and then they have these unsatisfactory. So as I read this, I'm wondering if this particular teacher, we had one that we were using as an example, would the issue be that they've been receiving satisfactory year 1 through 3, then in year 4, possibly the unsatisfactory, ineffective, or needs development, and is that where the issue, or could this teacher have had unsatisfactory needs improvement along the way, but then they can appeal at year 4?
Before the 4th year, they wouldn't be able to appeal it.
So what happens? They're like on some type of improvement plan?
They can do, the school system can modify things for them as you know, if there's just simply failure to do the job, then they're not offered a contract.
Mm-hmm.
If I would think that if the school system sees a great deal of potential, they just having trouble with classroom management or discipline. I don't. Anyhow, we'll dodge discipline, but lesson plans and that type of thing. A lot of times it takes a year or two to get on your feet good. I've often thought that the education colleges ought to do a guarantee like the technical colleges do, that if you're not able to do the job, then they take you back and retrain you. Because there are so many things that go into being a teacher, and you're constantly learning as you go forward, and so I think that in the first 3 years you're basically learning.
Yeah.
And when you start that 4th year and you've signed that contract, then things are going to become a little tougher on you as far as you know how these things are.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Excuse number 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chairman Benton, for bringing this bill. I just had one question that's sort of related to Doreen's, Representative Carter's comment about the 4th year. How do we define tenure, or at what point do teachers become tenured in our state?
A tenured teacher is someone that would have signed that 4th contract. Before that time, and I think I'm correct on this, the pay scale is the same for the first 3 years, and then you move up. And so that would be the tenured employee.
Thank you.
And if I'm wrong on that, if anybody needs to correct me on that.
Is that good, Randy?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Number 24 is down here. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman. And I just wanted to ask on line 36, who is the Professional Standards Commission?
They are the people that certify your teaching certificate. And they're the ones that make sure that you're obeying all the rules as far as what teachers have to go by.
So it's like a teachers group at the state level, or?
Well, there's probably some teachers on it, but you know, sometimes during my teacher career, I really wanted to know who was on that thing, because of some of the things that they were.
So who appoints them? Like, is it a?
I don't know whether it's the governor or whether they're certainly not elected, but I get. Anybody out there can tell?
We're pretty sure the governor appoints the members to
okay.
that, as he does most
I know
executives.
when I was teaching, there was some that'd been on there since Heck was a pup. So that's how they get their job.
I don't know. Whoever Heck is.
Well, I think Representative Evans, I wrote that down, that for part of one of our meetings, we need to learn who they are and what they do, and teacher tenure also. And we'll look forward to Chairman Benton's bill on education guarantee. Chairman Benton. Belton. Sorry.
Evil cousins here, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say, Chairman Benson, that I appreciate your teaching service. I think the church taught over 20 years, I believe. And I every time I go to a lot of all my schools in my district, and every time I go talk to teachers, they're always talking about this and making this change. So I think it's very good that we have this appeal process. And isn't it true, sir, that this is going to make a lot of people, a lot of teachers feel a lot more secure in their jobs?
Well, I think it's going to, as far as the whole scheme of things, make teachers feel better in the fact that if they do get a bad rating and they feel like it's unwarranted, that they have some method of appealing this. And it's not just an appeal to the person that did the evaluation, it's appeal to someone higher up to go over the evaluation. Because it can be devastating to a teacher to be moving along real good, and all of a sudden maybe the administrator changes or something else changes in the school, and all of a sudden you're getting low numbers, and at the end get a unsatisfactory, and it can be devastating to teachers to have that happen to them, especially when they think they've been doing a good job.
Okay, any other questions for Chairman Benton? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee? Move do pass. A second. Numerous seconds. All those any more discussion? All those in favor? Voiced by aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have 1 no. Thank you, Chairman Benton. Your bill moves on. Okay, next one up, House Bill 83, Demetrius Douglas. And while he's moving up here, he can, I saw one of our state school board members in the back. I just want to, have any of your friends with you? Yeah, Mr. Johnson's just stepped out in the hall to take a phone call, but he's here today as well. Well, thank you for being here with us. And we made a mistake early on. We didn't recognize the teachers, and I hate we didn't do that. If we could just raise your hand, wave at us, we'd love to welcome you and thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I will be looking at LC 337878S. And first, for the record, I just want to tell Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting me present my bill at the subcommittee with those discrepancies in front. And I do owe Vice Chair Stovall, Chairwoman Stovall, an apology for, I said my bill only had one change, but it had a whole 3 lines. I wanted to get it right over in the Senate so we wouldn't have the same problem I've had the last 2 years to come up this time. So I sent it over there, and from line 15 in the middle where it says if on 15, all the way down to line 18 at the end of God, it ends with God. They added this verbiage to our bill. And then it starts over to the regular bill that I had. But I just want to apologize on record to her that it was more than one word. You were correct, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. Committee members, I'm not going to press for time. I know you guys have other business to do. This bill just does one simple thing. I didn't think recess would be this hard for kids. But being my 3rd year dropping this bill and coming before the committee, just 30 minutes of recess time, and it can't be taken away from punishment. And they also added for academic reasons over in the Senate. So I'm going to go with what they like, and that's my bill, and I will stand for questioning.
excuse me, and one other word I think in line 19, that may have been in there, maybe not have, is encouraged.
Yes, that was.
I think that's the other change.
Yeah, that was the one word that I said.
Yeah, that's that one word, encouraged. I think you look at is encouraged to include an average of 30 minutes a day, which I think is great help. Questions from the committee? It's like number 18. Is that Doreen? Well, you're on the roll today, ma'am. Go for it.
Thank you, Chairman. First, Representative Douglas, I really just want to say thank you. I think, since I've been here, we've made health very important as we continue to study, heart disease and diabetes and different diseases that we can control. We're starting to see those diseases with younger and younger children, and we know that exercise and diet is very important. So I just want to tell you thank you for your persistence, and we're going to pray for the Senate if it get through the House that they'll think about the children and their health.
Thank you.
We're having this recess, so thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And you have number 26. Is that Chairman Cantrell? Gotcha.
Thank you, Representative Douglas, for bringing this bill. My question is this, seriously.
Yes, sir.
DOE, what do they think about your bill? Have you talked to them?
Yes, I have. I've talked to McGibney after the last minute. Gary McGibney after the last minute.
You got it right.
Okay. I just want to it's a tongue twister. You get McGibney. I talked to him after the last minute, and he gave me a great insight. Matter of fact, he's been with me all 3 years on this bill, and he, at each step, each year, each time, he has given me great knowledge and insight on what they were doing to me in the Senate and how to make it better.
You're here now.
Don't say anymore.
Don't say
believe
anymore.
I told that.
This is on video now. Don't
No,
say
this is on
anymore.
video. But I love my guys in the Senate. I love my guys in the Senate. They have helped me with this bill also to be very, I was going to say, staying on task. But yes, they have fully behind the bill.
Okay.
Along with Georgia School Board Association, Superintendent of School Richard Woods, Professional Association Page, Georgia Parent Teachers Association, Georgia Association of Educational Leaders, and the Georgia Association of Educators.
Well, thank you, Representative Douglas. I appreciate your hard work on this and stick-to-itiveness, and I'm very intimidated by you. And but you've worked really hard, gotten it to a place where I feel really supportive of your bill, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for those comments.
Representative Paris.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. Representative Douglas, I commend you for the bill, too. I've been here, I think, the whole time you've been trying to get this bill through. And the importance of it, I think sometimes we kind of, we look at it from a health standpoint, physical health and like that. But children just have so much attention span, like adults do. And I think that recess really does help them with, exerting some of the energy that they may have pent up that may be causing them to act out and such as that. So are you trying to address some of that also?
Yes,
in this bill?
ma'am. I would say I have most of my Montessori schools were already doing, actually doing 60 minutes of recess. But they told me in an interview that I had with them that they don't have any behavioral problems. The kids that were acting out in class after recess, that came to a minimum. And the bullies, also the bullies that they had in their Montessori, they didn't have them anymore because they were able to let them get out and exert that energy. And they became better students for that. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my former seatmate,
yes,
at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
I thought you was going to ask him a difficult question.
That's hard to do to that young man.
There you go. Okay, any other questions
how
from?
do you say Gary McGibney?
Any other questions for the committee? Seeing none, it's the will of the committee. Recognize Representative Howard.
I'd like to make a motion do pass on ALC 337878S.
Second. Here, second. All those, any other further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? A few noes. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members.
Thank you. And last but not least, you know, the nice thing about being freshmen sometimes is you get to learn about a lot of stuff. And Representative Montahan has, we've talked about, he's been sitting through a lot of education, and we appreciate you.
I feel smarter.
You feel smarter?
I feel smarter.
And if you'll look on you, we have the bill 337520.
Okay.
And the floor is yours, dear sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of this esteemed committee, I present to you LC number 337520. The goal of this bill is to require public comment period on every regular meeting agenda put forward by a local board of education. There are systems that are currently not allowing folks to speak as you would probably typically see during a city council meeting or a board of commissioners meeting, where you can sign up on a sign-up sheet and speak to an issue. And so what we're trying to accomplish with this is just set some basic minimums, right, that folks should be able to talk to their elected officials and have a redress of grievances.
That's all you want to say?
Yes, sir. That'd be it.
Okay. Look here, we're just giving a little bit of a hard time. It's number 18. Is that Ms. Carter? Representative Carter, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for this bill.
Well, thank you.
Yes. So I just want to be clear, because in one of my school districts, they're one of the districts you have to send advance notice.
Right.
So in here it has you won't have to do advance notice to speak for the public comments, but will there be or do we need a provision for a cutoff time, like once the meeting starts? Because I know in my city council meetings, you have to sign up before the meeting starts. But will this bill just kind of leave this open if there's a school board meeting, and as long as the meeting is going on, someone can sign up for public comments, or just trying to?
If you would please give me the line number, that way we're looking at the same thing here.
Ma'am, if you look on line 28 or 27, 28, 29.
That answers my question.
It answers that.
Thank you. I was looking at line 25, 26, but Chairman,
okay.
That's why he's our chairman. Thank you.
No. I think I've asked him the same thing, ma'am. Before I flip to page 2. But, you know, it looks that the chairman of the board, local board of education, shall have the discretion to limit the length of time.
That's right. And Mr. Chairman, that is a big part of this bill. We are giving deference to the chairman. We're telling him that he can speak to the number of folks that are speaking for or against an issue. He can also speak to the time they have. If it's, 2 folks can speak for 1 minute apiece, wonderful. If it's 5 people can talk for 30 seconds apiece for each side of the issue, wonderful, great. I don't think we have an issue with that. We just want to give people the opportunity to speak to their elected officials.
Here. I think it is Chairman Nix or Chairman Bent. Chairman Bent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Most school boards have what's called a work session, and then they have a board meeting a couple of weeks later where they ratify all the things that they talked about during the work session. Are you saying that they have to give them public comment time during both meetings, or just in the one meeting, or we don't allow public comment when this group meets as a whole, but we allow public comment for the subcommittees? So is there something in the bill that would make a difference there, or are we saying that any meeting that you've got to let them talk?
Chairman Benton, thank you for the question. this bill doesn't speak to, it doesn't speak to that. I'm amenable to an amendment. If you'd like to do something that says a regular meeting, I think everybody would be okay with that. For a regular board meeting, if they have something like a work session or something like that, we're okay with that. I'd be amenable to
Y'all
it.
are a very sharp group today, because Chairman Benton, you caught us again. Regular monthly meeting, I believe, is the wording that the bill sponsor and I agreed to earlier today.
But if they have a work session, that's a regular scheduled meeting as well. How about if we just say they can only comment at 1?
Go ahead. Excuse me. There you go.
On line 12, if you'll look at the current language of the law, it talks about a monthly regular meeting. So that term, I think, would be just applicable to the monthly meetings and not the working groups.
Okay. So in your opinion, that we don't need that amendment?
Well, I think you probably should put regular meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
every
ma'am.
regular meeting.
Okay, so like they're on the end of line 22.
Right.
Put regular meeting. Regular, so we put regular meeting or regular monthly meeting?
But what I'm getting at is
Yeah, I
that
know.
most of them have 2 meetings a month, so which one's gonna be the regular meeting? The one where they ratify everything, or the one that they're doing, they're bringing in all, and usually that's where the public comment is taken anyway, is in that work session.
Chairman Benton, I've seen usually the comments during the regular monthly open meeting, not the work session.
Okay.
If any other committee members, I get lights up here, but Chairman Belton?
I was a school board, and we did not have regular work meetings. So to me, it'd be better to have this during the regular meetings, personally.
I think that's if I may speak to it, that's the intention of the bill, is to provide at these regularly scheduled meetings where you have, they're presenting awards, maybe they're presenting a policy change that could be, that could cause a public outcry, that folks would have a opportunity to speak to that. I think the bill speaks to an issue in our great state where we have some boards who aren't allowing, or there's an issue that happened within the time delay of the sign-up period, if that makes sense. So there's a delay there that we're trying to address, and so the regular meeting is what this bill would pertain to.
I guess, Chairman Benton, I don't have a problem with them doing it at every regular monthly meeting, if, you know.
As long as they're not having to do it twice in the same.
Sure.
Because that tends to make meetings very long.
Not earning that $25 a month.
That's right.
Whatever they get, you know, or difference.
It's kind of like an education committee meeting.
Getting that. Well, y'all see all this let up here. We get back to legislative council. Do you see any better way to say what we're up to?
I think if you put regular monthly meeting there, because again, and we can even cross-reference to subsection A, because if you look at line 13, it's talking about the regular meeting during which they transact business, so it wouldn't include what
yes, ma'am.
Representative Benton is talking about, the work,
Gotcha.
the work group.
Gotcha.
So.
Well, they transact business. Okay. There you go. Does the members of the committee understand what, if you just go back to 13 to kind of define that, you know, transactions of business are only certain meetings. The other ones are just discussions, and they are done at the full monthly meeting. Is that not right, ma'am? That's our understanding.
And because this is an education committee, I did bring microscopes with me. No, I'm joking.
Okay. Let's answer some. Let's get some folks got some questions for you. 15.
Yeah, you may have answered my question.
Okay.
You know, in the work session meetings, when do they release the information? Is the public allowed to go to those meetings? And then, if they are, at what point do they set the agenda for the regular monthly meetings, so that the public would be aware of what's coming up?
Representative, thank you for the question. I think I can speak to that, Mr.
Please.
Chairman. That's kind of what we're trying to solve here. Right. There's a lapse period, right, where they could. You would have to sign up so far in advance that you couldn't speak to an issue that's happened within that 5, 7, 10, or however many days is the advance sign-up registration period would be. Does that kind of answer the question?
That's kind of what I'm getting at. That from what I'm hearing, speaking to my board in Richmond County, sometimes there are things that come up on the regular monthly meeting that the public may not know until the last minute. So they can't speak to it, or no one's there to speak to the issue. So how do we?
Well, thank you for the support of the bill.
Yeah, right. I just want to make sure we're covering the gap.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
thank you.
Right.
Great question.
Representative Howard, I think too, and I, surely we yield to Legislative Council that those regular monthly meetings are standard. They're notified. They set them. The agendas are variable, but this bill is just saying as part of that agenda, they need to have public input. Did that help? Okay. How about 23? Where are we at?
Thank you, sir. Not a question, but I think that the language it says that they're entitled to one meeting, not two. So that ought to clear it up.
Yes, ma'am. I think like in line 13, the transaction of business, and that is that main school board meeting. We're just going back and forth. Number 18, is that Ms. Doreen?
It's Representative Stovall's fault. Okay, so back to my question.
Okay.
The line 28 and 29 doesn't quite answer. So what I was trying to get to is, I love the fact that this bill is removing that advance notice. But my question is, if the sign-up period, let's say we're at the board meeting, and board meeting started at 7, you got there at 6:59 and a half, and they've cut off sign-ups.
Right.
So I'm saying, how there's no mechanism. So you don't have to give advance notice like a few days, but I think we need to address if there's gonna be public comment, then how and when is that opportunity there? So,
Representative, I would say just speak to it. I think I understand your question as being, if during the meeting I want to question a policy, is that correct?
No, I don't go that far.
No.
Okay.
No, so are we saying advance of the meeting? So are you saying the advance of the meeting the start time of the meeting, or? Okay, I'm line 25, 26.
May I jump in here, Mr. Wayne, with that? Do you, would you say or you're saying you would like for it to say at the beginning of every, whatever the word is, regular monthly meeting, there's the opportunity, but I think that's what it says. But I think just general rules of engagement on public, you got to be there in time, you got to sign in, they're going to call you up, you're going to go.
So this is as long as they've signed up for the meeting start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I mean, that's the way I understand it. And I always will ask and add, if they don't dance to this song, guess what? We're back here next year.
Correct.
And I think that's one of those things that, I think this is just more of a message. Yes, ma'am. How about number 26?
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I was going to move to call the question.
In just a moment. It's number 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe in the future part of the bill that doesn't have to be today, but I think that we should address videotaping of public comment time. What is happening now in school systems, they will cut out the so they'll tape the whole entire meeting, but when it comes to the public comment time, they will void that part out. So if you're looking at it from home, you may hear the board members making a comment about something that was said during public comment, but you won't know what it was because it's voided out and it's not even recorded in the minutes of the meeting as well.
Thank you, Representative.
And I think that'd be something you can work on, is that if you get it out of rules and on the floor in the Senate, make your bill stronger.
That's a great idea, Mr. Chairman.
Have
Thank
number
you.
24,
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman. Representative, I'm fortunate enough that the two school boards that I represent are Forsyth and Fulton, and they do this as a matter of course. So of the 181 districts, how many do not do this as a matter of course?
And I don't, I'm sorry, I'll address you as chairman. I may be giving you a
You are giving me a promotion,
Okay,
but thank you.
Representative, I'm unsure of the total number of districts that currently that wouldn't be in compliance with this bill. I can tell you that my home county is in compliance and are working to be in compliance with this bill. And they're amenable to the wording of this bill. And they've been very good about being very transparent in giving anybody a chance to talk at their local meetings. But this just addresses a problem that I think is in some of our counties statewide where they're not giving them that opportunity.
Thank you.
If I might interject, you can look along the signers of that top line there. That might give you a hint where that's coming from. Okay, and I think what's the will of the committee? Or any further questions? Got the will of the committee?
I like the move
Do pass. Second? Okay. At this moment, we have an amendment. We need further discussion. Thank you. No, hearing none. Now can I say it? Yes. Okay, I have an amendment. And if you look, members, I'd like to amend 7520 on line 22 at the end of every, say, regular monthly. So it would read, each local board of education shall provide a public comment period during every regular monthly meeting. Yes, I'd like to make a motion. Thank you, sir. Second, any discussion? All those in favor of the amendments, aye. None, any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, those we've got on the table, all those in favor of moving 7520 as a substitute, as amended, please vote aye. Any opposed? No. There you go. You're good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
You're welcome. Our meeting is, before we adjourn, we're looking at a meeting time tomorrow to hear Kevin Tanner's House Bill 32 at 1 o'clock or upon adjournment, and it'll be good. He won't sleep all night, but I think he'll be ready to go. If we have any differences, we'll text you bright and early. Our meeting is adjourned.